And welcome back to the First and Goal podcast. My name is Lewis. Next to me, as always, my beautiful co-host Laraib, as we're here to break down Week 5 of the NFL season. A ton of awesome games, some crazy upsets, and just the gift that keeps on delivering, which is the NFL season. Getting through our first week with bye weeks, things like that. So some of these records and stuff are going to finally start to look a little weird as teams won't have the same amount of wins, losses. But now we've had a good sample size of over 4 games now for every team. Now we can really kind of pick apart and see teams like what direction are they trending, or the teams that maybe we thought were a lot better than they were because they had a hot start. Now starting to come back down to earth, playing some better teams competition. And now also, unfortunately, injuries also playing a factor at this point in the season. So a ton of interesting things to get to, Laura, but I know where you want to start, and that's with the picks.
I'm gonna get those damn picks pulled up. And I mean, football is fun, but oh man, I just have not been sharp with these picks. Especially these last 2 weeks. Put up
Ali.
4 stinking points this past week. Of course, my lock doesn't hit. Of course, my upset doesn't hit. The other games we disagreed on, you beat me. I just need to, I'm trying to get too cute after my week 2 victory. I need to lock myself back in the lab and start being a little bit more sharp like you.
Well, I mean, even the games we agreed on, Laraib, Kansas City, Buffalo, Miami, Philly, just a lot of ugly, crazy losses all across the board. But yeah, I got super sharp. I like the Saints in that spot. Shout out to them. Shout out my Commanders. Well, I don't know if we'll really get to talk about them much this episode, but and then Tampa going on the road, Kansas City couldn't get it done as my lock, but two upsets in a row. I need to start putting real U.S. dollars on this. So, but that's gonna do it for the picks. Hopefully, for your sake, you can make us a little more competitive next week because it's been really just I'm kind of bored at this point. But we'll see if you can bounce back. We got an interesting week 6 slate. But before we get to week 6, let's go ahead and break down week 5, Laurent. We're gonna start filming this on a Tuesday with going over last night's game, the Monday Night Football Classic. Laura, we had the Jacksonville Jaguars defeat the Chiefs 31 to 28 at home. Just really awesome, back and forth, exciting game. And it's just awesome when you have that solo Monday night game. A Jacksonville team that doesn't have a ton of tread in their tires in terms of experience. So it's like, this feels like one of those. We get to watch the Chiefs showcase that we're kind of bored of the Chiefs. But boy, did that game ever deliver. And the Jags pull it out in the win, Laura. Just biggest takeaways from the game itself. What do you think?
Well, like I mentioned, when we were talking about our top 10 teams, it was just Jaguars and their defensive unit as a whole. Devin Lloyd with the pick six on Patrick Mahomes, that was huge, turning point in the game. They didn't really have the pass rush on Patrick Mahomes to really force him out of the pocket. He had plenty of time, but the way their secondary really covered the Chiefs receivers, I was really impressed. And then that linebacking core led by Devin Lloyd, really outstanding game by their defense.
Yeah, I was just, you know, to be fair, they did give up over 500 yards of offense to the Chiefs, and the Chiefs looked like, besides the awful blunder on the 1 yard line, that was a 14-point swing, basically. Um, that the Jags defense, it's gave up a lot, but they did get the key takeaways in the big moments, and they came up with the final stop on that final Chiefs drive. The most impressive thing to me in this game was the play of Trevor Lawrence, notably like with his legs, because you see this a lot with Trevor. It's like he'll break out of the pocket and get a nice scramble, and you're like, oh, that's sweet. He's got some wheels. Like he needs to do that more, and then he won't pull it out the rest of the game. And it's like, but he understood the moment against the Chiefs in a big spot. They were wearing their throwback jerseys. Really good environment. It seemed like Jacksonville fans really showed up and showed out for that game. Um, but just super impressive showing from Trevor, just on the ground, really running over defenders, making big plays, and just converting these, long critical third downs in the middle of the field. Where for a lot of time, I've watched the last Monday Night Football game I can remember Jacksonville playing was against Buffalo last year, and that was one of the worst games I've ever watched my entire life. Trevor threw one of the worst interceptions I had seen in my entire life. Shout out Matt Milano. But just yeah, I mean, Liam Cohen really changing the culture here for Jacksonville. It seems like there's a belief within their building that they can make a push, that they have faith in their offense, faith in Trevor. Even Travis Hunter went out there and made a few big plays. That he's finally starting to show up as a big part of this offense. Brian Thomas comes up with a big catch late. So a lot of their, biggest question marks going into this game, some of those were answered. Still not perfect, right? We could figure it out, but and the biggest thing for me, how they're able to run the ball, and then with Trevor being able to use his legs like he did, this offense has a ceiling that I think can really be elite in this AFC.
Yeah, but obviously the big elephant in the room, Lewis, is the Chiefs and their third loss this year in a one possession game. Every single time, they had the ball back with three timeouts and 20 seconds left on the clock, and you and I are on the phone, and we know, hey, this thing is going to overtime,
Yep.
a couple misplays here and there, and the Chiefs don't really look like themselves, and it all really comes down to their inability to put away this game earlier without their inability to run the ball. Patrick Mahomes, once again, the leading rusher for this team this week and the entire season overall, it just has not been there. And this trade deadline, I know we're, just finished week 5, but it's going to slowly start to creep up on this Chiefs team, and really expect them to make a move for a running back just because their inability to run the ball has been very apparent this season.
Yeah, and this is one of the rare cases where whenever teams can't run the ball, it's kind of like, oh, well, there's big problems on the offensive line. No, they're getting holes, and Mahomes is finding ways. It's just Pacheco and Kareem Hunt are not the dynamic duo that we really thought they were, especially in the past few seasons to elevate this run game. Um, so they definitely need to get that fixed. For me, Laraib, it's the other side of the ball. It's the defense. Yes, they had a few big turnovers, a pick, that led to points, but like just not really getting a pass rush whatsoever all night long. I mean, and the big viral clip, right, was Chris Jones on that final play where Trevor Lawrence fell down. He just kind of standing around, looking around, like whatever. Like there Trevor goes. He'll sit on the ground for 2 minutes, take a nap, and then he's back up on his feet, running into the end zone. Um, but that was just like a kind of a microcosm of the entire night for the Chiefs defensive line, just really not being able to get pressure with four. The only time they're really getting pressure is with blitzes, and that's when you saw Trevor get on the run and start to really hurt them with his legs. So really, if they can't get a consistent pass rush with four, they're going to have to blitz a lot this year. And to get some of the better offense in the AFC, they're going to get diced up to pieces. And this secondary really not holding well. Jalen Watson, kind of a no-show this year for the Chiefs. And then obviously McDuffie's playing outstanding, but the rest of the secondary really misses that veteran leadership of a guy like a Justin Reed who used to be back there. And just they keep losing these guys year in, year out. Now it's finally starting to hurt this secondary room. So that's something to look forward to going forward. I still think the Chiefs are in a good spot. We'll talk more about them in their division later. I don't think it's ultimate, ring the alarms, or they still have a good chance to win their division. But this is a game, Larav, where there's been so many times where if the Chiefs have opened with a 14-0 lead, that game is over. They do not beat themselves. This is the first game in a long time where I can remember the Chiefs beating themselves and just giving a game away.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting to see the adjustments they make through 5 weeks, Lewis. But let's go ahead and move on to one of our patented uh, um, segments, the this or that. We're going to give each other two options. It's going to be very simple, Lewis. This or that. So let's go ahead and start off with the first one. We have the Baltimore Ravens really struggling right now without Lamar Jackson, sitting at 1-4 versus the Pittsburgh Steelers coming off a bye at 3-1. This or that, Lewis, who will win the AFC North?
I'm going to go with the Cleveland Browns, right? No, I'm kidding. Uh, oh man, as much as this absolute pains me to say, it's still the Ravens. The Ravens are still going to win this division. The Steelers just haven't been impressive. And now you can throw all this in my face in just a moment, okay? Just give me a moment. The Steelers have not looked impressive whatsoever this year. They've had moments, Aaron Rodgers kind of flinging it, but this just feels like a car crash waiting to happen. The way their offense is super pop gun, super gimmicky, it just doesn't feel like a sustainable way to run an offense. They can't really run the ball that well, and their defense is a lot more susceptible than it has been in previous years. I think Aaron Rodgers is better than what we thought going into the year. But especially when the weather gets colder and these games start getting tighter, I just don't trust him whatsoever to come through in these moments. Flipping it over, the big question for me is for the Ravens, have the injuries reached a point of no return? Like, if we're at that point where the defense is just going to completely fall apart, then not only is this team not going to compete for the division, they're just going to have to punt this season and look on to next year. But this team is just way too talented all across the board. Lamar Jackson's not going to miss the year. He will be back. They have a tough game against the Rams next week. Rams opening up as an early big favorite, so the indication is no Lamar. So 1-5 you're kind of looking at right now, which seems insurmountable, but their schedule lightens up. They still have games against the Browns, Steelers, and Bengals, who I think they're significantly better than. I think they should win all those games, and then games against just lesser teams in general. So I don't know. It's hard for me right now. Like, just think about in your mind, because I know what you're gonna do. You're about to say Pittsburgh, and then you're gonna convince yourself why Pittsburgh should win their division, and you're gonna be like, ah, damn, that it kind of sucked to say out loud. So I am gonna go with the Ravens, but if the injuries keep on amounting, it's gonna be a very tough task.
Yeah, and Vegas does agree with you there, Lewis. The Ravens plus 100, Steelers right behind them at plus 125.
Crazy.
And I'm going to go with the Steelers. I mean, like you mentioned, this Ravens team will be staring down the barrel of 1-5, Lewis, with Lamar Jackson most likely not playing this week. And the thing is, I think Lamar Jackson was injured way before that Chiefs game, in my opinion. I think even during that Lions game where he took 7 sacks might have been the start of that, or even week before. This was just a season where he was not the same to really start off after week one, in my opinion. And now, like you mentioned, the injuries piling up, the coaching, we talked about it after week one, and I was kind of on the side of John Harbaugh, but I've completely jumped off of that bus as fast as I can. And I think this Steelers team, uh, even though you can say their defensive personnel isn't as gaudy as the Ravens and the guys they have, but I
They're
still like
healthy.
their unit better. I like their defense unit better as a whole than the Ravens and how they're playing. I think Aaron Rodgers is better than Cooper Rush, and we'll see. I think that the point is that, or the way Vegas is looking at it, is Lamar Jackson is going to be back after this bye week coming up in week 7, but I'm not exactly sure that'll be the case if this hamstring thing is really bothering him. They really needed to win these last couple of games against the Texans, who could have been a beatable opponent. And then this week against the Rams, who we see didn't have the greatest game last week. So these are kind of must-win games for the Ravens. And now you're saying Lamar Jackson, we still got to put him on the back burner. Meanwhile, the Steelers play the Browns this week, and they're going to be 4-1 most likely. I think it's going to be too insurmountable of a task for the Steelers team. And I will say the Steelers have a little bit of a tough schedule coming up. They still have to play the Packers, the Bills, the Lions, the Colts, and they still have to play the Ravens twice. And so it's going to be a little bit of a gauntlet. But if Aaron Rodgers can stay healthy, I think Jalen Warren has been underlooked this year in his ability in the receiving game. I know you're shaking your head, but Derrick Henry himself hasn't been exactly a
Yeah.
world beater. And so I like what the Steelers team and the position they're in.
Yeah, we'll see. I think the big thing that you said at the very end right there, it's still 2 games to play against each other. And right now, with basically 2 games between them, that could be the difference right there. And we've seen the past few years, Lamar historically has struggled against the Steelers, but the past 2 years, creamed them both times. So we'll see how the narrative can flip this season. But my question for you, Laraib, in this or that, the Bills and the Eagles both leading their conferences going into the week with 0 losses, both still leading their conferences, but both with 1 loss on their resume, Laraib. And what I want to ask you is between the Bills or the Eagles, which team's loss do you think is a bigger indicator for something more dooming in the future?
I have to go with the Eagles. I mean, we've been talking about it week after week after week. That offense and their inability to run the ball. We were talking about this a little bit earlier. Maybe this is not an offensive line issue. Maybe it's not a Saquon Barkley issue. But whatever the issue is, it is, glaring. This week against the Broncos, you have a 14-point lead, and you can't put the game away. 2 weeks ago against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you have a huge first half lead, and you allow them to claw back into that game. and really put that game in jeopardy. And now I think you have a good game this week coming up against the Giants on the road, but I think there's a lot more question marks for that offense compared to the Bills, who we know they lack a little bit of a receiver talent on the outside. Keon Coleman isn't exactly a world beater, but just in a spot at home against the Patriots. The one thing is, another reason why I think it's tough for the Eagles is I just think the NFC is just way better this year than the AFC. You have your top heavy teams in the AFC, but minus that, it really isn't too crazy. Meanwhile, for the Eagles, you're still competing with a team like the Lions for the number one seed. You're still competing with a team like the 49ers, the Rams, and the Buccaneers, and all those teams that are still in the mix. Meanwhile, for the Bills, you're looking at it. Okay, the Chiefs, they just kind of lost. The Ravens are kind of out of the race. The Bengals are out of the race. Your only real competition staring you down the barrel is,
The Colts,
yeah, the Colts really. And then, the Steelers are
the
3-1.
Patriots, I
The
guess.
Patriots were right there, but I just think for the Eagles, this has a lot more question marks, and their division or their conference is a lot more tougher.
I agree with you, but the thing I'll say about the Bills quickly is if you just compare the two teams' resumes, the Eagles have by far played the much harder schedule. They've beaten the Chiefs this year. They beat the Cowboys, who have been playing pretty good football. They beat the Bucks last week, right? They have some pretty impressive pelts on their wall so far this season. Meanwhile, the Bills, right? They barely come back against the Ravens in week 1 in what we thought was some awesome Josh Allen heroic game. Now that doesn't look as impressive, right? Why were you down 15 or 16 points to the Ravens in the fourth quarter? Now, obviously, the Ravens team was healthier, but still. And then the next week, you smear the Jets, whatever. And then you're in a nail biter against the Dolphins in the fourth quarter where Tua just throws one of the dumbest interceptions ever. The next week, it's a 2-point game against the Saints in the fourth quarter. Now you can argue that game never really felt like it was going to go out of the Bills' way, but anything can happen on it. What if there was some crazy block punt or something and the Saints all of a sudden go up 9 points and then what? It's a two-possession game. Hey, I was dreaming there for a minute. Um, and then obviously the loss last week to a Patriots team where yeah, they just lack that element of just that. Who is that game changer outside of Josh Allen? We were saying the similar thing about the Packers, right? And they go out and they get Micah Parsons, a legitimate game record, game changer. And the Bills, it just seems like they've been looking for that, that dynamic edge rusher, that awesome wide receiver. It seems like James Cook is starting to emerge as like that awesome running back, but I don't know. They just lack that huge playmaker in a big spot, not named Josh Allen. Who is he going to trust? Just not there right now. But I do agree with you. I think the Eagles are in the tougher spot. 6 rush attempts from Saquon Barkley in a game he played the full game, start to finish, is inexplicable to me, Laraib. I mean, especially in a game where you have a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter and you were just passing the ball 38 times for no reason. And Devontae Smith had a decent game. You still cannot get A.J. Brown involved whatsoever. And it just seems like this offensive coordinator, Kevin Patullo, just is in way over his head and he's hearing all the Philly noise and all the, oh, you need to get AJ Brown involved. Throw him the damn ball. Throw him the ball, Patullo. Throw him the ball. And then he did, and it didn't work. And now this week, well, you need to run the damn ball, Patullo. That's not how we play Philly football. And then guess what? He's probably going to run him 40 times next week, and they better hope he doesn't get injured because they play on Thursday Night Football coming up against Saquon's former team. So that's going to be the biggest storyline of that game. And like you mentioned, the NFC is a lot tighter, right? So all that being said, the Eagles, I still think, are in the best position in the NFC, at least for like number one seed, a division title, things like that. They still have the talent. It's not like there's a big injury or there's something affecting this team. It's all internal and they need to figure it out. I think they have the capability of it, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's just a team who it's I don't know if it's the Philly culture, but like you mentioned, it's just all the noise is always just getting to this team for some reason. I'm not gonna try to do a stupid Philly accent, but
That was good though, huh?
I heard a little bit too much Boston in there, in my
Ah,
opinion. Uh
what the problem?
Okay, all right, all right. Hey, Jordan. Hey, Jordan. No, but I think this team just a little bit too much outside noise for the talent that they have, but they have a good spot this week to fix up some things, Lewis. But let's go ahead and move on to another this or that. The Broncos, like we were just talking about, beat this Eagles team on the road in a very impressive win. Meanwhile, the Chargers have dropped 2 games in a row. The Chiefs this year, Lewis, have looked a little mortal in the past 2 seasons. So this or that, the Broncos or the Chargers in a better spot to top the Chiefs this year.
As we're speaking right now, the answer has to be the Denver Broncos. And you can say, hey, we saw these two teams play 2 weeks ago, and the Chargers pulled out a win at the very end. And, Herbert's better than Nick's. I don't understand. What's the conversation here? Well, this Chargers team is just a snake bit cursed franchise that will never see success until, I don't know, I die. But obviously, in last week's game, Joe Alt goes down with a high ankle sprain. And then this past week, we see, first round running back Amarian Hampton goes down. He's going to be out for at least 4 to 6 weeks. They put him on IR. So this just offensive pieces just getting plucked and plucked away from Herbert. And we know Herbert's a guy who needs to play with confidence, right? And that confidence can get shaken really quickly, as we saw in the playoff game last year, where he threw 4 interceptions against the Texans. I don't think we mentioned that on this show before. Um, but and as for, I mean, the defense didn't look that great last week, just getting ran all over by this Commanders team. But you could tell without the two starting tackles, Laraib. I mean, Trey Pipkins, he may have lost that game himself as offensive tackle. It was second and, I don't know, 19, right? And this was after a penalty. It may have been his penalty, but after a penalty, second and 19, Herbert unleashes one of those classic nerds love it. Just frozen rope right down the middle of the field. Boom, Keenan Allen, first down. Holding. Pipkins. All right, back it up. Second and 28. Herbert goes back. Boom, lad. Huge catch and run. First down. Holding. Trey Pipkins, loser. And it just deflated the entire team. They couldn't run the ball. I think it's like Kamani Vidal or whoever the second string running back is now that obviously Najee tore his Achilles. So, yeah, this Chargers team, snake bit franchise, it's just really hard for me to believe that they're going to figure this thing out. And the Broncos, super impressive win last week. I'm leaning Broncos in that one.
Yeah, this Chargers team, the most alarming stat, Lewis, Justin Herbert only 2.16 seconds before he has pressure in his face in that
Get the
game.
ball out quicker.
And like you and like you mentioned, just shooting themselves in the foot, just play after play, the huge holding penalties, a game, flipping play, and Ladd McConkey takes a punt back. Oh, nope, roughing the kicker. And so just a lot of boneheaded mistakes. And then on the other side, I'm gonna go Broncos with you here, but I don't want to give that team too much credit. They were down 2 scores against the Eagles, and all right, you find a must you muster a way to win this game against the Eagles, who were not that impressive in this game, but you still have to give them credit. They did what they needed to do. They win that game. This Chargers team, they play the Dolphins this week, and this is going to be a huge test for them.
That's
I
crazy.
was about to say I couldn't pick them until I see them, show me something, but I can't pick the Dolphins. But if they find a
Oh,
way to lose that game in Miami, it is a West Coast team traveling to the East Coast. This would be a huge spot for you to pick the Dolphins as your upset of the week. Um, just that defensive line getting huge pressure on Justin Herbert. The thing is, I think just the Dolphins, their secondary is just too god awful to but this Chargers team, they have a lot to figure out. Hopefully they can, because I don't even know what they do. This Joe Alt injury I haven't gotten too much information on it, how long he's going to be out, but we know the high ankle is the kiss of death, especially for a tackle. Like, you played at that position. You got to be able to get out wide on those defensive ends and block for your quarterback, especially on his blind side. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Chargers can do. And then for the Broncos, oh, we're running out of time. Okay.
no,
The
no, no.
Broncos.
That's Keenan Allen. It's
Keenan
coming.
Allen is running out of time.
Oh,
So
it's coming.
you're telling me the rattlesnake is coming for him next. Ooh,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, that's just a huge thing looming over them. And then Broncos, I mean, J.K. Dobbins. Let's not act like the rattlesnake isn't creeping up on him next either. But that team really impressive the way Pat Surtain and that defense kind of put them, kept them in that game against the Eagles. So I got to lean Broncos.
All right. Well, speaking of second-year quarterbacks and Bo Nix, my question, we're 5 games in for some of these guys, 4 games in the case of Penix and Caleb, but Drake May made a huge statement on Sunday Night Football going into Buffalo and beating the Bills. And we've discussed this a lot. That was our first big podcast episode this season, talking about the second-year quarterbacks going into this year, but as it stands now, Laraib, this, or that, which second year quarterback would you take going forward?
I'm still gonna say Jaden Daniels at
Okay.
1, but Drake May has definitely crept up into he he's right there on the 2 or 3. I'm not gonna put my foot down on either one of those spots, but yeah, I think you and I agreed he was definitely top 3, but the outside noise, Bo Nix, people felt like he was up there. JJ McCarthy, all the hype that he had, people felt like he was up there. Spencer Rattler and the performances he had in New Orleans, people felt like he was right up there.
No
Uh,
one thought
but I
that.
still have to I still have to go with Jaden Daniels. I mean, that was a great game from Drake May, and the one highlight play people are saying that will start vaulting him was that third down play, the defensive tackle's pulling down on his jersey and he just hangs in there stiff arm and then slings it sidearm. That is going to be a career defining play for Drake May, but for Jaden Daniels, the resume is there. These two rosters are kind of similar in the amount of talent they have. Maybe you could say the receiving core a little bit better in Washington, but Jay Daniels is just a proven commodity. He's been on the road and won a playoff game in Detroit. That's something I can't discount. He's won 10 games in a season before. And so I still have to lean Jaden Daniels, but really, really impressive from Drake May. And I think he will continue to be battling for that 1-2 spot with Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, we agree in the top two, even though Caleb Williams had a bye week, so I want to give him some grace. We'll see how he can bounce back from a tough start to this season. But as far as this season goes, this season alone, it's obviously Drake May 1, Jaden Daniels 2, but that's just because Jaden's missed time, right? But you got to give in the context of what Jaden was able to accomplish last season. That I agree with you. I'd still have Jaden as number 1, but what was really impressive to me is there were some obvious signs this going into the season. A reason why I think we both picked this team to be a playoff team to go into the year. Yeah, it was, not only is the schedule favorable, but you bring in Vrabel, who's just this steady force at head coach, huge improvement at coach. You bring in, Will Campbell, just help on the offensive line. Now offensive line is better. And then one of the more shocking things, one of the biggest things that I kind of underrated going into this season was how much just a steady receiver on the outside would help Drake May. And I was shocked at how quickly Stephon Diggs was able to come back from injury this year. But he's looked awesome so far this season. And the last 2 games, over 8 catches a game, over 100 yards receiving, just being that safety blanket. He's clearly not the same Diggs that we saw, vault Josh Allen to that next level, or it was just steady until he got hurt last year for Houston, right? But he could still give you these games where he finds a way to get open, one of the best route runners in the league, and he could be a young quarterback's just best friend because of how he gets open, how violent his cuts are, and you just see the consistency offensively that Patriots can sustain longer drives. There's not these big drops or, Drake can't find a guy open, so he takes a bad sack or he has to make a stupid play on the run. And it just feels like he's getting a lot more comfortable. And you feel like this kind of maybe like a Josh Allen-esque arc. Now, he's not the same quite of athlete that Josh is or was as a young player. But I think Drake's ability just throwing the ball has been super impressive, right? Top 3 in the league in completion percentage so far. Just feels like he has a good rhythm with his offense. And, give credit to Josh McDaniels for building him a good, competent offense with some professionals back there. So, yeah, I so far this season, Drake May has impressed me the most, but I'm still going to give the slight nod to JD. And I'll say about JD, came back this past week and slow start to the game, but just finally brought that steadying confidence, really energized the running game with his threat to run, found guys going down the middle of the field. So I think Jaden Daniels, the Commanders, are going to have a big, hey, what about us moment this season where they're going to remind folks. Maybe that happens next Monday night against Chicago. But yeah, super interesting between those two. And the rest, McCarthy, obviously not. Penix, you can't lose 30 to this Panthers team. But sneaky Spencer Rattler, I'll stop right there.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned for the Commanders, Jane Daniels with that running game with Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is going to
Hello.
add a huge another element to this team. And we saw they were able to move the ball confidently against this Chargers team, even without Terry McLaurin out there. One guy you didn't mention, Deebo Samuel. People thought the tread was worn completely off of that tire, but he has shown he's still got a little bit of juice left in that tank, and they've been really impressive. Of course, Zach Ertz,
Oof.
he's a huge safety blanket, but not in this game. They didn't need him
No.
at all. And so, yeah, those I think Drake May and Jaden Daniels are going to be two guys that we're going to be talking about for a long time. We saw Josh Allen, Lamar, and Mahomes come into that league, when they were rookies, and it looks like these, two, three guys right here might be that next upcoming generation.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this or that, one of our favorite games here on the show. If you have any ideas for this or that, leave it down below in the comments. Like, subscribe, everything. Before we get out of here, we have a Thursday night football game we need to discuss. We have the Philadelphia Eagles traveling to New York to face the Giants. Eagles 6.5 point favorites on the road. Eagles coming off their first loss in over a year, and now looking to bounce back against this Giants team who they've pretty much dominated as long as Jalen Hurts has been the quarterback. Um, Jackson Dart kind of dealing with an injury right now, so his status is still kind of questionable for this Thursday night football game. Um, there are just too many things unknown about New York, but what potential angle could New York have in this football game, Laraib?
It has to be Scadaboo, right? It's definitely not going to be Jackson Dart. Just an
Jameis.
awful game from Jackson Dart against the Saints. Just ridiculous amount of turnovers. I know Brian Dable kind of felt like, my job is secured. We gotta win with we gotta win Jackson Dart at home against the Chargers, and that win certainly doesn't look as impressive with the way the Chargers have been playing. And then to go to New Orleans against a team with
House of Horrors.
one of the worst rosters in the NFL, and throw up five turnovers. Scatterboo on the sideline complaining about his gloves on why he fumbled. Just complete dysfunction over there. Meanwhile, this Eagles team very hungry after that loss. I think Saquon, he's going to be dominating this Giants team for many, many more years to come. And this is just going to be a massive spot, like you mentioned. That Philly noise is definitely going to be in the offensive coordinator's ear. I don't know if you want to do your Philly accent again.
Yeah,
Uh,
Patullo, you gotta run the damn ball.
okay, that was a little bit better than what we had earlier. I think this Eagles team just runs all over the Giants, and they win this game 27-13.
Yeah, and we'll see about Dart in this game. I think you could very well see a Russ or even a Jameis cameo in this spot. You want to protect the young quarterback, and you kind of alluded to it, but I'll just expand on it. A lot of days off after a Thursday night football game for decision makers to sit back there and really look at the ball and just say, interesting. Now, I saw some people saying, you can't fire him after he just got his quarterback. You can, actually, you should. Um, and I have Philly in this game. I just don't think they lose back to back games, especially against a poor Giants team. Give me Philly in this one, 31-10.
All right, well, that will wrap it up for our week 5 review. A lot of things we hit on, especially on the AFC side of the things. This is going to be a huge week for a couple teams. Like you mentioned, the injuries starting to pile up for a lot of guys, but I need to get my head screwed on straight in these picks coming up for week 6. But we will be back on Thursday with our week 6 picks. But anything to say, Lewis, before we go?
That'll be all.
All right,
Thanks
this is
for
the first
tuning
and
into the
goal.
First and Goal podcast. Signing out. Peace.
Peace.